Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 297 is a very long bill because it is a housekeeping bill. They're always long, and this is no exception. They're generally technical in nature. They resolve technical conflicts between bills previously passed. They reflect changes in court decisions that impact the systems. Generally, you'll find things in them that are changes to make the systems more efficient. This is about the fourth or fifth in my 8 years of housekeeping bills I've been associated with, and like those, there's little to no fiscal impact on the bill. I will say, however, housekeeping bills typically do not blaze new policy ground and are not where past policy disputes are renegotiated. They generally clarify language, and if you look through this bill and its 24 sections, you'll find that it clarifies language, it adds definitions, it makes administrative changes to facilitate disability retirement issues. Section 15 reflects changes necessitated by a decision of the Sixth Circuit Court, and the final is, because of that court decision, it has an emergency clause. So with that, I'm going to first ask the clerk to report House Floor Amendment 4.
Gentlemen, we have to report the committee sub first.
Yes, I'm sorry. We have a committee sub that's included in the discussion that I've already made and would move passage of the sub.
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 297.
Motion is for the adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted.
I'd like to call on the clerk to report House Floor Amendment 4.
Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 4 to House Bill 297.
Gentleman from Jefferson.
House Floor Amendment 4 just makes some more technical changes. There were some disputes on conflicts in language that were discovered in the language we used, and this is very typical of why housekeeping bills are necessary, because you have to make sure that language used is reflective of the administrative process so as not to disadvantage either the system or the beneficiaries. So with that, I'll move passage of House Floor Amendment 4.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 4. Is there any discussion on the floor amendment? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. House Floor Amendment 4 is adopted. Gentleman from Jefferson.
I would like to yield to the gentleman from Spencer 53 for a friendly floor amendment.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you ask the clerk to report House Floor Amendment 5?
Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 5 to House Bill 297.
Gentleman from Spencer.
Thank you. Members, this concern was brought to me by our health departments during the state of emergency with COVID that's been ongoing since March of 2020. It's necessitated that they hire a lot of additional temporary workers. I'm talking about contact tracers, other individuals that are brought on temporarily. The issue they're trying to avoid is employees under that situation, they are not required to make pension contributions to them. They're technically outside of the pension system. This language would clarify and extend the length of time. It would go back retroactive to March 1st, 2020. It would go through December 31st of 2022 and just spell out that they are not making pension contributions. These temporary employees that were just brought on for this state of emergency and COVID would not be included as part of the pension system. Mr. Speaker, I move for adoption, House Floor Amendment 5.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 5. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. House Floor Amendment 5 is adopted. Gentleman from Jefferson 36.
Thank you, sir. The bill you have before you now, which was amended by House Floor Amendment, which is Committee Sub amended by House Floor Amendment 4 and House Floor Amendment 5, again is a housekeeping bill with one exception, and that is Section 2. Section 2 contains some changes, one either requested by KPPA themselves or the CERS component of the board. The biggest change, and all the changes that are in the bill that we have before us today, right now, is the biggest change is the request by KPPA to take, well, they already have 2 people that are not in 18A. Those are the top 2 investment people. And the need that, as expressed, has been what we have been paying and can pay for investment people is just nowhere close to what it cost to get top-notch investment people. So KPPA requested, and the CRS component of the board concurred, and what you have in Section 2 is a change taking those people out. It does require, before they are filled, the executive director will have to lay out job descriptions, salary ranges, and those will have to be approved by the board. In addition, this requires the KPPA board to approve the budgets before they are submitted either to the legislature or to the governor. That has not been done in the past, and it's a needed change. So again, everything right at this moment is there's concurrence between the 4 KPPA members and the 4 C members. I want to go back a little bit for those of newer members. I was on Metro Council, Louisville Metro Council from 2011 to 2014, and I recognized, thank you, the need to make sure that CERS was respected and was not put at a disadvantage by the KRS board. As we move forward, 2017 was the first bill to actually separate. That was Senate Bill 226, which did not pass. And the hesitancy in those between 2017 and 2020 was that it was going to increase cost. If you took a large organization, you split it into 2, you were going to have a less efficient organization and create additional cost. And I think that's what it took until 2020 to get House Bill 484 passed. At this time, I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Bullet 26 for an amendment.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Bullet 26.
Thank you, gentlemen, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I'd like to ask the clerk to report House Floor Amendment number 3.
Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 3 to House Bill 297.
Gentleman from Bullet.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, in the 2020 session, I sponsored House Bill 484, and in the 21 session, House Bill 9, which were designed to give independence to the local or to the state systems, CERS as well as KERS and SPRS. At the time, those systems were looking for, or CERS was looking for some autonomy because of their large membership and the number of investments that they held. And this General Assembly passed both of those bills. They were signed by the governor and became law, separating those 2 systems under the umbrella of the Kentucky Public Pension Authority. In the 2020 session, House Bill 484 had a provision that was designed to allow for CERS to pay the initial separation costs through the course of the legislative process, and I know everything seems to be attributed to COVID, but COVID did in fact hit during the 20 session, and there for a period of time, this legislature was meeting intermittently, and that provision for the 3 years was removed. And to avoid going to a conference committee and possibly having that bill not passed, we accepted that change in the bill. However, it was never the intention, and when that bill cleared this House, a 3-year provision was included in there. So it was not the intention of this body, and I believe it should not be the intention of us going forward, that one system should pay the costs forever for the separation. The bill called for the initial costs to be paid, and that was understandable. And I'm not going to argue with that, and I'm not going to debate that, because we were doing something new, and there would be initial costs related to that separation. However, what we're seeing now is we're seeing a decision being made to charge costs related to separation to CERS to go on forever. For example, we're paying KRS staff salaries, the executive director of KRS purchasing his laptop. Those initial charges were not to be for long-term factors that once that separation in that system, if you will, kind of leveled out, would still have to be met. The law was very clear that this was going to be an initial cost payment of these independent systems, and CERS agreed to that. They saw the importance of that. What this floor amendment does is it places a June 30th, 2024 timeline and says that up until that point, CERS will pay for the costs that are attributed to separation, those initial startup costs, which would include rebranding, the printing of badges, those types of things that would be related to transitioning to this. After that, these are going to be two independent boards operating under the umbrella of the Kentucky Public Pension Authority, and it shouldn't be a process where we see these costs being separated continually. At that point, beyond this is going to be the public retirement system operating. It's going to be important, as has been pointed out before, each board, each retirement system has 4 members. That was designed on purpose by this body. I received input on that bill. I think the gentleman from Jefferson 36 is the one who made that recommendation, was that so that we didn't have one board having a majority could run everything and make all the decisions for another board. That's kind of the issue that led us to the point of separation. And those of you who have not been here very long, we studied the issue of separation quite extensively. I co-chaired an administrative subcommittee, and I was appointed by the Speaker along with Senator Schroeder on the Senate side. And for almost 2 years, we looked at this issue. We came away with the decision that the board would be evenly divided. That was so that they could work these decisions out. They need to work these decisions out, and we don't need a situation where simply because some folks are still upset because the legislature chose to create 2 separate boards under one board, the Kentucky Public Pension Authority. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would move for the adoption of House Floor Amendment number 3.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 3. Gentleman from Jefferson 36.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some of you have asked me, and others are wondering, is this a friendly amendment or unfriendly? And I'll just put it this way. I'm going to be gone at the end of the year, and I want to tell you why it took so long to get, again, I'm going to reemphasize, it took so long because of fear, concern that we were going to start duplicating cost. This is a concern. Whether this specific change is going to exacerbate that, that is for you to decide. Again, separation and the 4 board members, an even number on the board members, was intended to get people to work together. That's not really happened, unfortunately, and that's sad. But so this body is going to have to be on guard to watch over the growth of overhead of these 2 boards. It is going to facilitate some cost duplication. There's even desire in some quarters to re-register securities to completely separate. If that happens, you're going to increase your investment cost because we're not going to have the big pool of assets to invest. The 4 KPPA board members are opposed. The 4 CERS board members are in favor. But I will leave it with you that, again, KRS is operating under the law that we passed, regardless of how it got passed. My preference would be to take the entire Section 2 of this bill that you have before us and make it a separate bill. That's probably the way it ought to be done. That's not where we are. And at that point, for you to decide. Mr. Speaker.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 3. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Roll call having been called for by 2 or more members. Clerk will sound the chimes. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, nay. All members voted. Does any member wish to change or explain their vote? Clerk will take the roll. Being 84 members voting aye, 11 members voting nay, House Floor Amendment 3 is adopted. Gentleman from Jefferson, 36.
Mr. Speaker, I move final passage of House Bill 297 as amended by the committee sub and by House Floor Amendments 3, 4, and 5.